Learn English through story. 30 minutes English listening. The power of kindness. Tom had been preparing for his job interview for weeks. He had read about the company, practiced answering tough questions, and even bought a new suit for the occasion. That morning, he left home early, ensuring he had enough time to reach the company without any delays. But just as he was about to cross the street, he noticed an old woman struggling with her grocery bags. One of the bags had ripped, and apples rolled across the pavement. She bent down, trying to pick them up, but her hands trembled. Tom hesitated. He checked his watch. Only 20 minutes left until the interview. If he helped her, he might be late, but he couldn't ignore her. With a deep breath, he rushed over, picking up the apples and placing them in a new bag. "Let me help you carry these," he said with a smile. The old woman looked up, gratitude shining in her tired eyes. "Oh, thank you, dear. You are very kind." They walked together to her small apartment just a block away. As she unlocked the door, she turned to him. "You didn't have to do this, but you did. The world needs more people like you." Tom smiled, but as he checked his watch again, panic set in. He had only 5 minutes left. He sprinted down the street, his heart pounding. By the time he reached the company, he was out of breath and 5 minutes late. Inside, the receptionist gave him a disapproving look. "You're late for your interview." "I know, and I'm really sorry," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. A moment later, the door to the interview room opened, and a woman stepped out. Tom's eyes widened in shock. It was the old woman he had helped earlier. She smiled warmly at him. "Ah, Mr. Tom, you're late, but I already know what kind of person you are. Sit down. Let's talk." Tom couldn't believe it. He had thought he had ruined his chances, but instead, his simple act of kindness had spoken louder than any resume. He got the job that day, not just because of his qualifications but because of his heart. Lesson: sometimes, the best opportunities come when we choose kindness over personal gain. The little seed. In a quiet village, a farmer named Jacob was known for his patience and love for the land. One day, while clearing a section of his farm, he found a tiny seed, no bigger than a grain of rice. Something about it felt special, so he carefully dug a small hole near his garden and planted it. Every morning, Jacob watered the seed. He made sure it got enough sunlight, removing weeds around it. But after a week, nothing happened. The villagers laughed. "You're wasting your time, Jacob," they said. "That seed will never grow." But Jacob was a patient man. He continued to care for the seed, speaking to it softly, telling it about the beautiful tree it could become. A month passed, then two. Still, there was no sign of life. One day, Jacob's neighbor came over. "Give up, Jacob. It's been months. Plant something else in its place." Jacob shook his head. "Everything grows at its own time. I will wait." Then, on the 92nd day, as Jacob watered the spot once more, he saw it, a tiny green sprout breaking through the soil. His heart leaped with joy. Over the following months, the sprout turned into a small plant, then into a strong sapling. Years later, it became the tallest and strongest tree in the village, providing shade for weary travelers and a home for birds. People admired the tree, and Jacob simply smiled. "It was never about how fast it grew," he said. "It was about never giving up." Lesson: growth takes time. Don't give up just because you don't see results immediately. The Two Wolves. Liam was a young boy who often struggled with his emotions. Some days, he felt happy and full of energy, but on other days, he felt angry, jealous, or afraid. He didn't know how to control these feelings, so he went to his grandfather, a wise old man who had seen many seasons of life. "Grandfather," Liam said, "why do I sometimes feel good and other times feel bad? It's like there are two different people inside me, fighting all the time." His grandfather chuckled, nodding in understanding. "That's because inside every person, there are two wolves," he said. Liam's eyes widened. "Two wolves?" "Yes." His grandfather continued. "One wolf is full of anger, jealousy, greed, and fear. It makes you say hurtful things, feel hatred, and doubt yourself. The other wolf is full of kindness, patience, love, and courage. It makes you want to help others, be happy, and chase your dreams." Liam thought for a moment. "So which wolf wins?" His grandfather smiled, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. "The one you feed, my boy, the one you feed." Liam sat quietly, absorbing his grandfather's words. He realized that every time he chose to be kind instead of angry, he was feeding the good wolf. Every time he focused on gratitude instead of jealousy, he was making the good wolf stronger. From that day on, whenever Liam felt negativity creeping in, he reminded himself of the two wolves. He chose to feed the wolf that would lead him to a better life. Lesson: we all have good and bad inside us, but we get to choose which one grows stronger. The Cracked Pot. Every morning, an old woman carried 2 large pots of water from the river back to her house. She balanced them on a wooden pole across her shoulders. One pot was perfectly intact, while the other had a small crack on its side. By the time she reached home, the cracked pot had lost nearly half of its water. This went on for years. The perfect pot was proud of its work, but the cracked pot felt ashamed. One day, it finally spoke. "I'm so sorry," said. "Every day, you carry me, but I can never bring back all the water. I am useless." The old woman smiled gently. "Look at the path we walk every day," she said. The cracked pot glanced around. For the first time, it noticed something surprising. On one side of the path, the ground was dry and barren, but on the other side, the side where the pot leaked, beautiful flowers bloomed in bright colors. "I knew about your crack," the old woman continued, "so I planted flower seeds along this path. Every day, you watered them without even knowing. Because of you, the village enjoys these flowers." The cracked pot's heart swelled with pride. It had thought of itself as broken, but it had unknowingly created beauty all along. Lesson: our imperfections have purpose. Even our flaws can bring beauty to the world. The Boy and the Starfish. One morning, as the sun began to rise, an old man took his usual walk along the beach. The tide had gone out, leaving thousands of starfish stranded on the shore. Without water, they would soon dry out and die. As he walked, he noticed a young boy running toward the ocean, carefully picking up starfish and throwing them back into the water. Again and again, he repeated this action. Curious, the old man approached. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "There are thousands of starfish here. You can't possibly save them all." The boy bent down, picked up another starfish, and gently threw it into the sea. Then he looked up at the man with determined eyes. "I may not be able to save them all," he said, "but I made a difference for this one." The old man stood silently for a moment. Then, he smiled, bent down, and picked up a starfish himself. Soon, others walking along the shore saw them and joined in. By the time the tide came back, the beach was nearly empty of stranded starfish. Lesson: no action is too small if it makes a difference in someone's life. The elephant and the rope. In a small village, a traveler visited an elephant training camp. As he walked around, he noticed something unusual. The enormous elephants were tied to wooden posts by nothing more than thin ropes. They could easily break free, but none of them tried. Puzzled, the traveler asked the trainer, "Why don't these elephants escape?" The trainer smiled. "When they were young, we tied them with strong ropes they couldn't break. They struggled for days, but eventually, they gave up. Now that they're grown, they still believe they can't break free. They don't even try." The traveler stared at the mighty elephants. Each one had the strength to pull down trees, yet they remained trapped by a belief from their past. That night, the traveler lay awake, thinking, how many times had he let his past failures stop him from trying again? How often had he believed he was not good enough, simply because of an old experience? The next morning, before leaving the village, he wrote a note to himself. "I am not the same person I was before. I am stronger now." The elephants remained tied, but the traveler walked away a free man. Lesson: never let past failures define your future. You are stronger than you think. The gift of time. Daniel was a successful businessman. He worked long hours, traveled frequently, and was always busy with meetings and phone calls. His young son, Oliver, adored him but rarely saw him. "Dad, will you play with me?" Oliver would ask. Daniel would smile and pat his son's head. "Not now, son. Maybe tomorrow." But tomorrow never seemed to come. One evening, as Daniel sat at his desk, exhausted from a long day, Oliver walked in holding his piggy bank. "Dad, how much do you make in an hour?" he asked. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Why do you want to know?" Oliver hesitated, then said, "I want to buy 1 hour of your time." Daniel felt a sharp pain in his heart. He looked at his son, who had been waiting for his attention. "Not money." Without another word, he put away his laptop, took Oliver's hand, and said, "Let's go play." That night, they laughed, built towers with blocks, and told stories. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel realized something. Success meant nothing if he wasn't present for the ones he loved. Lesson: the greatest gift you can give someone is your time. The blind man's sign. A blind man sat on the sidewalk with a small sign beside him. "I'm blind. Please help." He held out a cup, but only a few people dropped in coins. Then, a woman stopped, read his sign, and took out a pen. She flipped the cardboard over and wrote something new. Smiling, she handed it back to him and walked away. Within minutes, everything changed. People began stopping, reading, and placing money into his cup. By the end of the day, it was full. Curious, the blind man asked a passerby, "What does my sign say now?" The passerby read it aloud. "It's a beautiful day, but I can't see it." Tears welled up in the blind man's eyes. The message was the same, but the words had power. Instead of simply stating a fact, it made people feel something. Lesson: words matter. The way we express something can change the way people react. The golden touch. King Midas loved gold more than anything. He filled his palace with golden treasures and wished he could have more. One day, a mysterious figure appeared and granted him a wish. "I wish that everything I touch turns to gold," Midas declared. The next morning, he touched a chair. It turned into solid gold. He touched a rose, it became gold, losing its fragrance and softness. He laughed with joy, imagining his endless fortune. But then, his daughter ran to him. "Father, look at the birds outside," she said, hugging him. In an instant, she turned into a golden statue. Midas froze in horror. His laughter turned to tears as he realized what he had lost. He begged for his wish to be undone. The mysterious figure reappeared. "Do you still desire gold?" Midas shook his head. "No, I want my daughter back." With a wave of the figure's hand, everything returned to normal. Midas embraced his daughter, vowing to never let greed blind him again. Lesson: true wealth is not measured in gold, but in love and relationships. The glass of water. A professor entered the classroom holding a glass of water. The students expected the usual question, "Is the glass half full or half empty?" But instead, the professor asked, "How heavy is this glass?" The students gave different answers: 100 grams, 200 grams, maybe 300 grams. The professor smiled. "The weight doesn't matter. What matters is how long I hold it. If I hold it for a minute, it's light. If I hold it for an hour, my arm will ache. If I hold it all day, my arm will feel numb and paralyzed. The weight of the glass doesn't change, but the longer I hold it, the heavier it becomes." She placed the glass down. Stress and worries are like this glass of water. If you carry them for a short time, nothing happens. If you carry them all day, they become unbearable. The key is to put them down, rest, and then pick them up when needed. The class fell silent, absorbing her words. Lesson: let go of stress before it overwhelms you.